Saint Paisios of the Holy Mountain, the Heavenly Signal Man. A narration biography for children. The only trouble was his age. He was still too young to leave home and enter a monastery. Because there was no high school in Konitsa, Arsenios elected to train as a carpenter after he finished primary school. He would follow in the steps of the Lord, who, as a child, had worked alongside Joseph, the Panaia's betrothed. And so, with God's help, the plan came to fruition. Arsenios became an apprentice to a master carpenter and gradually became a great craftsman. What a fine young man is that son of Mrs. Empanides, the villagers of Kunitsa would say. A good, steady craftsman, but so virtuous in character, too. According to Arsenios, his skill as a carpenter had a simple explanation. It all came down to his secret formula, which he would share with anyone who asked. Let your hands do the work and rest your mind on God, he would say. When we work in peace and prayer, our spiritual state is reflected in what we create. And so those who accept our creations will be blessed. At home, Arsenios had begun to live in a way that would prepare him for his future life as a monk. He would no longer let his mother and sisters wash his clothes and would instead do it himself. He made sure to clean and put everything he used back in its place. He started fasting and prayed extensively, but he also made sure to cultivate his soul. As one should, each day he would reflect on his actions, and if he realized that he had hurt someone, either through his actions or his words, he would immediately ask them for forgiveness. But just when Arsenios thought the time was near for him to leave for the monastery, things took an unexpected turn. During World War II, he and his father had been the sole protectors of their family, since Arsenios' older brother had left Konitsa to defend their country. Yet, as soon as World War II ended, the tragic civil war broke out in Greece, and Arsenios was called up for the military service. As he left his home, he prayed to Panagia, saying, My sweet Panagia, let me suffer, let me be in danger, but don't let me kill another man and deprive myself of the honor of becoming a monk. And if, dear mother, you protect me, I promise to serve your monastery here in Stomio, the one burned down by the Germans for 3 years. In April 1948, when he was 24 years old, Arsenios went to Corinth to enlist in the army. He passed his physical and was assigned the specialty of radio signalman. To Arsenios, this was a great sign. He asked the Panagia to protect him from having to take a human life, and she had answered his prayers, as radio signalmen were not required to bear arms in battle. Well, said the other soldiers, when they learned of Arsenios' assigned duty, you must have friends in high places. What such friends could I possibly have? Are you mocking us? Even the educated folks here weren't assigned to radio signal duties. Who's your contact among the general staff? Well, if you're that eager to know, my contact is Christ. In these days, the other soldiers had trouble understanding Arsenios' unusual behavior. He did more work than what was asked of him. He let his fellow soldiers take a night's leave when it was his turn, and whenever there was a misunderstanding among the men, he stepped forward to take the blame so that the parties responsible could avoid punishment. He even volunteered to lead the most dangerous mission so that others would not risk their life, particularly men with families. Because of this, some of the soldiers thought him a fool. They even gave him mocking nicknames such as the constant scapegoat and the housemaid. Once, when he was ill with a burning fever, he insisted on working until he passed out. His fellow soldiers laughed at him, saying, Come, we'll take you on a stretcher to the place they fix cars. It was not long ago, however, before the soldier realized what a gem they had among their ranks. They began to admire Arsenios's virtues and love him. They saw him as their big brother, and everyone who had a problem sought counsel and comfort in him. During his 2 years of service, Arsenios saw horrific battles and endured incredibly difficult conditions. His unit often would march for days on end, crossing vast distances in the snow or during heat waves with no food or water. During the winter, they ate snow to quench their thirst, and during the summer, they drank still water from puddles they found in the animal footprints. Many of Arsenios's fellow soldiers lost their lives in battle, and he himself was a mortal danger countless times. During one such battle, he dug a small trench to protect himself while the bullets ran down in masses. Other soldiers came running to him, begging to be let inside his trench. Arsenios let all of them in and left the trench to make room for others. The flurry of bullets raged on, and at one point the others heard him cry out, "I've been hit in the head!" Arsenios, who did not wear a helmet but only a military hood, traced his head with his hand, but there was no blood. What happened? The bullet had grazed him, shaving a strip of hair from the back of his head without leaving the slightest mark. When they realized what happened, the other soldiers explained, "This man either has a guardian angel or is a saint himself." In fact, it was the Panagia who kept Arsenios safe. Thanks to his constant prayer, but also because he was willing to sacrifice his own life for his comrades. In March of 1950, Arsenios was discharged from the army. He went home to Konitsa with the hope of soon leaving for a monastery, but his father pleaded with him to stay for a while to help the family, who were now in dire financial state. Arsenios obeyed, delaying his decision to become a monk, and went to work. He opened his own wood shop where he worked as a carpenter, a trade he had learned in his youth. He was gifted and could make gorgeous ceiling, floor, door, windows, and iconostasis. He never took payment from the poor or anyone who had lost loved ones during the war. Instead, he offered a lot of his earnings to charity. And so for the next 3 years, he worked hard while at the same time preparing himself for a life as a monk. Then in March 1953, after patiently fulfilled his obligation to his family, he left for Mount Athos to make his dearest desire finally come true. Arsenios had visited Mount Athos 3 years prior, after his discharge from the army. During that initial visit, he explored most of the secluded corners of Mount Athos. His goal had been to find a holy elder living in a peaceful existence devoted solely to God, with the hope that he might live by his side. Arsenios went from place to place, meeting different elders, absorbing their righteous teachings like laborious little bee, gathering nectar from flowers. But he did not find a place where he could stay for good, so this time he decided to begin his monastic journey in one of the 20 monasteries of Mount Athos. After careful consideration, he decided to join the Constantinitou Monastery, one of the most ascetic monasteries on the Holy Mountain. However, once again, God had a different plan for Arsenios. While he was on the boat bound for Constantinitou, a great storm broke out. The ship altered its course, and Arsenios was forced to approach Mount Athos from the northern side, the site of Esphigmenou Monastery, believing that God had led him there on purpose. Arsenios went to this monastery and was accepted as a novice. Life at Esphigmenou Monastery followed a strict regime which followed Arsenios to devote himself to ever greater ascetic trials. During the day, he was assigned to the monastery's dining room and bakery. Arsenios worked hard there, performing his tasks while also assisting others in their jobs, so as to let the elders monks rest. As for the evenings, although exhausted from the day's work, Arsenios would stay up all night in prayer. He would permit himself no more than an hour's sleep and would stand in a bucket full of cold water to keep him from dozing off. After his lengthy evening prayer, he would go to church for the morning service, stand upright in his stalls for several hours straight. After service, he would begin his arduous routine all over again. As if all this hard, loathsome work wasn't enough, the devil would harass Arsenios and try to lead him astray by afflicting him with temptations and memories of his family life back home. But as soon as this happened, Arsenios immediately would visit the abbot for confession, and his temptations would disappear. It wasn't long before the abbot and monks of Esfigimeno Monastery became aware of the deep faith, hard work, and good character of this young novice. By the end of Arsenios' first year, the abbot decided to make him a monk. The ceremony took place on March 27, 1954, and Arsenios was given the new name Avrikios. After his tonsure, Father Avrikios was appointed assistant in the monastery's carpentry workshop. Soon, however, he fell ill and spent 2 months in the monastery's infirmary. While under care, he became saddened, knowing that he could not help his brother with their tasks. But the kind monk nurse told him, "Don't be sad, brother. Praying for fathers is even more valuable, for God will then give them strength to carry out their work." Averikos listened to the nurse's advice and prayed for his brothers with all his heart. After recovering from his ailment, Averikos, who still longed for an ascetic life, asked the abbot for his blessings to go into the wilderness to find an elder and live out the rest of his monastic journey in peace. The abbot consented, and for about 3 months, Averikos lived close to Elder Cyril, a virtuous and enlightened ascetic who lived in a secluded hut. Soon, however, the monastery's representatives threatened to expel Averikos from Mount Athos if he did not return to the carpentry workshop, where he was much needed. Father Avrikios was then forced to take refuge in Philotheo Monastery, where a relative of his, a hieromonk, lived. It was in this monastery on March 3rd, 1957, that Father Avrikios received his monastic schema. At the ceremony, the abbot gave Father Avrikios a new name, the one by which the entire world would come to know him as Paisios. During his stay at Philotheo Monastery, Father Paisios experienced many miraculous events. One of the more memorable of them happened at the end of a long and tiring day, when the monastery sent him on an urgent task. By this point, Father Paisios was starved, exhausted, and weak from having worked all day. As he waited for the little boat to arrive to take him on his errand, he felt as though he was going to lose consciousness at any moment. Not wanting to worry the laborers working nearby on the chance that he fainted, Father Paisios sat behind a large stack of logs, hidden from sight. In this state of extreme exhaustion, he considered praying to the Panagia in the hope that she may send him some food to get his strength back. But he immediately berated himself, thinking he was unworthy and that was improper to make such a request. Yet before he could even finish his thoughts, the Panagia herself suddenly appeared before him. She offered him a loaf of warm bread and some grapes, and then instantly disappeared. Father Paisios was elated. Overwhelmed by joy and gratitude at this divine intervention, this miraculous visit of the Holy Panagia, marveling at all that had just happened, Father Paisios ate the heavenly gifts, regaining his strength, and was able to complete his errands. With the occurrence of such miracles, Father Paisios found that his desire to live in the desert of Mount Athos was growing by the day. What he yearned for now was to become part of Kutanaikia, a remote section of Mount Athos, where a small group of holy ascetics lived. But his every attempt to do so ended in failure. As it turned out, the Panagia herself had other plans for Father Paisios, and he learned one night while in prayer. I was praying in my cell, he later explained, when suddenly I could not move. I could not stand up. An invisible force was holding me still. I knew something was happening. I remained in that state for over 2 hours. I could pray and think, but I could not move a muscle. While in this state, I saw images of Kutanaikia and also Stomio Monastery in Konitsa, side by side, as though they were projected on a television screen. I longingly set my gaze upon Katunakia. Then I heard the clear voice of the Mother of God speaking to me. You will not go to Katunakia, but to Stomio Monastery. My dear Panagia, I ask that you send me to the desert, and you're bringing me back to society. Her voice spoke to me again sternly. You will go and meet with the mother of the mayor of Konitsa, and she will help you.